Heather here, and today what I wanted to really kind of talk about real quick was the difference between anterior and posterior shin splints. I have a three-part series on the channel regarding how to rid yourself of shin splint pain, but what I want to really make sure we understand is that distinguishing factor between anterior and posterior shin splints. So for those of you that haven't subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and do so. There's a lot of great content on here, and like I said, I already have a three-part series on really how to say no to pain in those shins, where we really start to now go a little bit more unconventional and looking at different things that you can incorporate to help you alleviate that shin pain. And as always, if you are a subscriber, thank you so much for always watching. And as always, I try to provide the best content available by integrating some of those classic things that we know about treatment and adding in some new. All right, so like I said, guys, we want to talk about anterior versus posterior shin splints. So let's kind of just now get a better sense of what that means. Okay, so as always, here's my friend, Mr. Super Skeleton. And right off the bat, we want to discuss what is the anterior, what does the word anterior mean, and what does the word posterior mean? Because right off the bat, you may not even know what that is. Okay, so anterior, very simple. If we look at our anatomical body standing right in front of us, anterior means actually front, okay? And anatomical position, just so you guys know, arms are usually out like this, okay? And the feet are more in a pointed plantar flexion position when we look at anatomical. So anterior means front of the body, okay? Posterior means back of the body, so everything on the back side. So a lot of times in fitness, you hear about people talking about exercise, the posterior chain. Well, that's what it means. Posterior, back, anterior, front, okay? So keeping it basic and simple, we want to now figure out, well, how do we distinguish between an anterior shin splint versus a posterior shin splint? Okay, so going down towards our lower limb, all right, and we can kind of see it here with the nice red line. This is our shin bone, okay, in the front. This is where our anterior tibialis would be, so it's coming off the front right here. And a lot of times this muscle actually is very underdeveloped in the majority of people. Majority of people have more calf muscle than they do really the shin itself. It's just one of those things, it's a little bit more underdeveloped. When we looked at the posterior shin, we're actually coming more onto the inside and kind of going more towards the back of the leg, because the name itself means that, posterior, versus anterior being more in the front. Now, the two have kind of more of a distinguishing factor depending on where you're feeling the pain. So if you're experiencing anterior shin splints, you should be feeling it more in the front. And if you're experiencing posterior shin splints, you should be feeling it more towards the back, more towards the calf. Now, a posterior shin splint could make you think that it is more related to your Achilles, getting into an Achilles tendonitis. So if you have questions regarding that, check out the video on Achilles tendonitis, where we kind of dive a little bit deeper on the two. Now, I will tell you this, guys, when we look at dealing with the shin, whether you can distinguish between anterior or posterior, you are going to want to work on the two, all right? So that means you're going to want to address the soft tissue work to the front as well as to the back. I'm also a big believer in addressing some soft tissue work too to the perineals, which are over here on the side. And in another video, we're going to get into what is the difference between pronation and supination, because that's very common in runners, not understanding if they pronate, supinate, how that foot is really striking the ground. So right off the bat, guys, a lot of times we get these shin splints just simply because we are a little bit more of a heavier heel striker, and what's happening is our shin is taking a lot of brunt force and not really being able to engage, so it's becoming more atrophied, tired out, and the pain is starting to set in. So like I mentioned, do check out the three-part series on shin splints on how to rid it. This was more or less trying to give you guys an overview on the difference between an anterior and a posterior shin splint. So like I said, the first thing we want to do is address all the soft tissue, which means we are going to go ahead, we're going to start foam rolling it out, both the front, the back, and the perineals. The other thing I'm very big on is also making sure that we work that entire kinematic chain. And as we know, that kinematic chain means everything essentially from that low back region through the hip all the way down to the ankle. It's so important that we address everything and that we don't just allow ourselves to have any weakness along that chain, but really focusing on the whole kinematic chain. All right, so with that being said, do check out the 3-part series on the shin splints. And if you're curious or not knowing, like I said, if it's really more coming from the Achilles, do check out the video on Achilles tendonitis where you can distinguish the two. So right off the bat, like I said, that's the difference between anterior and posterior. It's very important that we do kind of have a better understanding of where that pain symptom is coming from. Now, if you're unsure if you have an anterior shin splint or a posterior shin splint, and you are a current subscriber, guess what? You get a free consult with me. So go ahead, take advantage of that free consult. Let's just hop on the phone. Let's get a better sense of what's going on. Because like I've always talked about too, your shin splint actually may not be the root cause of the issue. It may be somewhere else, and if it is reoccurring, we want to figure out that problem, because then together we can really go ahead and resolve it. All right, so if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do. Take advantage of my offer in terms of obtaining a free consult with me. Let's distinguish between the two and get you back to your activity or your sport today. And like always, if you found some of this information helpful, please do hit the like button. And if there's some other conditions or ailments you would like addressed on the channel, as always, drop some comments down below and I can go ahead and help you there in terms of making some other videos that you may find useful. All right, guys, this is Dr. Heather, and this was just more of an explanation on the difference between an anterior and posterior shin splint, kind of getting a more sense of the anatomy of our body, and so this way we can figure out how to heal it naturally through a telehealth platform. All right, guys, this is Dr. Heather. Talk to you all later.